Welcome to Mid-Level Media, guys, and my review for the newest Blumhouse film, Fantasy Island, and find out why I think that it's really not that bad. Stay tuned. Fantasy Island is directed by Jeff Wadlow and stars Lucy Hale and Michael Pena. As 5 guests show up to a mysterious island to live out their ultimate fantasy, they soon realize how quick their dreams can turn into nightmares. So guys, I just finished watching Fantasy Island yesterday. I went to the theater to see it on a Tuesday morning, and I gotta tell you, I really didn't think it was all that bad. It's currently got a 10% on the Rotten Tomato meter, and you can argue whether or not that's justified or not. When you understand what Rotten Tomatoes is, that just means that 10% of the critics actually liked it and rated it favorably. The other ones did not like it, and I can totally see 90% of the people that went to see this not liking it. So I understand that score, but to be honest, I didn't think this movie was terrible, and it's getting kind of maligned across the board by critics and just regular film goers as just a terrible movie. And again, like I pointed out last week with Hansel and Gretel, this is not The Grudge. The Grudge to me is the most painfully boring horror film that I've seen in like 10 years. This, again, it's a fun movie. It's not terrible. So let's go ahead and talk about it. I like to handle my reviews in more of a discussion type format. So I'm not necessarily just going to point out positives and negatives. I'm just going to talk about the movie. First off, I like the mysterious premise of it. I like how everything was set up, and everything's set up pretty quickly. Like, you really get into the story and what's going on within the first 20-25 minutes, and it's actually kind of captivating. And what I found the most interesting was the fact that there are some storylines and story arcs with some of these characters that are actually pretty dramatic and kind of emotional in certain aspects. And it worked, and I think largely because some of these actors could carry these performances, and they actually worked quite well. Now, where this film kind of goes off the rails or downhill a bit is the fact that once you get into all of these stories, the film kind of feels like it's meandering for the next 30 to 40 minutes until you get to the finale. And the finale is so convoluted with so many twists and turns. There was probably about 15 twists and turns in the last 20 minutes of this movie. I just think there was way too many. And the movie is too long. It's an hour and 50 minutes, and it did not need to be that long to tell this story, especially considering how quick you get into everybody's separate stories. And there are a couple characters in this movie that are not the best. They're kind of portrayed as these douchey bro-type characters, and one of them's gay, and one of them's straight, and their ultimate fantasy is this party house with all these girls and guys, and they're both just portrayed as these kind of idiot type characters, and they didn't work for me. But I think that all the other performances were decent to good. I think that Lucy Hale, she made some interesting choices in the beginning of the movie, but once you get to the end and kind of figure out where the story went, and it kind of feels natural to her character that she would have behaved in that way. So I didn't mind that as much. I don't know the other two actors' names. The woman that had the family fantasy of having a daughter and a husband, and the other one that's fantasy was to kind of be in a war type scenario. I thought they were very good, and I thought they carried their roles very nicely. And it's just, when you go into a movie like this and you see and you hear all these reviews and comments, you're expecting the worst. And when I sat down and just started getting into this movie and watching it, I was like, this just isn't terrible. It's not bad. And I think it's kind of fun to rag on a movie sometimes. When I got out of The Grudge, I couldn't wait to get online and just blast that movie. It was so horrible. And I think that's what a lot of people had the same experience. They come out and they're like, oh, that was awful. I can't wait to just waste it online. And they overreact way too much. And this movie just is not that bad. It's not that bad to me. I think it's a solid rental. And, this movie was directed by Jeff Wadlow, who also did Truth or Dare, I think 2 years ago. And I didn't think that movie was that bad either. I thought it was kind of fun. And when you think about it as a B-level type horror genre flick, it's just not that bad. And back in the early 2000s, we got a lot of these types of movies that came into the theater. And I think if we were back in that era, removed from this kind of resurgence, renaissance of the horror films as of lately, probably in particular the last 10 years, horror's just been really good. But if we go back to that 2000 era, I think this would fit right in, and might even be a cult classic by now. So I I I've seen a lot of shitty horror films in my life, and to me, this one, it's not great, but it's not terrible either. So let's move on now to the kind of genre shifting I was talking about earlier. And this film kind of plays in multiple sandboxes of different genres, and almost none of them are horror. I even struggle to call this movie a horror movie because it plays more like, and I haven't seen the show from the 70s or 80s, but what I imagine that show was all about. And it plays a lot more in the kind of sci-fi, mysterious, thriller, kind of dramatic. It even has some scenes that would be straight out of a war type film. So this film plays in multiple different genres, and I think that it does it quite well. I think that it introduces them all and makes them all flow together and make sense. And I did enjoy that aspect of it. And like I said, this movie was interesting. Like, I was compelled by the mystery. I wanted to know what happened when they set things up in the beginning. And you can argue whether or not they actually paid that off at the end. I think that they kind of did. I think that when they wrapped things up, it sort of made sense, but a lot of, like I said, a lot of the twists and turns at the end, they kind of contradicted each other a bit. But once they got to the final conclusion, I think that conclusion made sense to the story that they were trying to tell, if that made sense. So overall, guys, I'm going to go ahead and conclude this review. And again, to be honest, I just don't think this movie's that bad. I don't think it's worth all the fuss that it's getting online. And if I had to give it a rating, I would give it a 7 out of 10. It's a C minus at best. It's mediocre, but it's not terrible. So I wouldn't recommend going out and seeing it, guys, but definitely rent it, stream it when it comes out. So let's go ahead and end this video right here. If you like this review, go ahead and drop me a like down below. It's just right there, guys. Just press that button. Just press that like button. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel for more great content, reviews, unboxings, Blu-ray showcases, and any other video I can think of. And also comment below your thoughts on Fantasy Island. Was it the worst movie that you've ever seen? Comment down below. Did you enjoy it? Let me know. So thanks for watching again, guys, and we'll see you next time.